Hi, I am Nina, and welcome to lesson 4 of our sweater class, in which we'll be knitting the sleeves of our sweater. As you can see, I have a finished torso right here. I have it relaxing on one of my spare options cables, but you can actually start the sleeves even before you're done with the torso, because they make, as you can see from my sleeve that I have out, much more portable projects than the body of a sweater. So a lot of people like to do the sleeves and the body at the same time, alternating between them. Sometimes the sleeves go fast and that's what you want, and sometimes you're going to sit in for a long time and you want something a little slower like the body. So we're just going to jump right into sleeves now, no matter where you are. You can either start with us or wait until your body is done and work them then. We're going to map out the increases for our sleeves in very much the same way that we did for the body. What you're going to need is your schematic, and I brought mine, which is getting progressively more and more banged up and stained. Hopefully yours is holding up a little bit better than my original. And we're going to calculate some increases. The sleeve that we're going to cover is basically funnel shaped, which means it's narrowest at the cuff, which is where your wrist comes out, and then gets gradually wider going up to the armpit. There are 3 sections to this sleeve: the cuff, the increase section, and the straight section, and you can vary the relative lengths of those however you want, which is what I'll be going over today. The 3 measurements that you're going to need from your schematic are F, which is the width of your sleeve at the cuff, G, which is the width of the sleeve at the upper arm, right where it meets the body. And you want to make sure that you measure this across a row of stitches and not accidentally go diagonal, because that'll give you a flawed measurement. And H, which is the length of the sleeve from the cuff all the way up to the armpit. And that is all we're going to need. We'll start with F. The first thing you're going to want to do is multiply that by 2 to get your circumference. My F is 4.5 inches. So all the way around this part of the sleeve is going to be 9 inches. And then you'll want to measure that by, you'll want to multiply that by your row gauge. So in my case, 9 times my row gauge, which was 6.875, gives me 61.875, or the number of stitches to cast on. Typically, you're going to want to use a pattern for your cuffs that matches the pattern that you used for your hem. So in my case, I used this 6-stitch repeat ribbing for my hem, and I'm going to want to use something that blends for my cuff. So again, my repeat is going to be 6 stitches, though I'm actually going to start with a 2-stitch repeat that blends into that. 6 is the harder one to match, though. So I want to make sure that this number, 61.875, is rounded to something that divides by 6, my repeat. So in this case, the closest thing is 60. So I'm going to start by casting on 60 stitches around my cuff. Now we're going to look at G, which is the top of the sleeve, or the widest part of the arm. Next, you'll convert that number of inches into stitches by multiplying by S. In my case, that was 4.75. So 9 inches by 4.75 gives us 42.75 stitches. Now, since I'm using a 6-stitch repeat to form the hemming, the border of my cuff that matches the hem of my body, I want to make sure that I round this number to something divisible by 2, and 42 is divisible by 2. So that means I'm going to cast on 42 stitches. Are you still with me? Good. The next measurement that we're going to look at is G, which is the widest part of the sleeve, right where it joins the body at the underarm. In my case, G was 6 inches, so twice G, which will give me the whole measurement around, is 12 inches. And again, I'll convert that number of inches to the correct number of stitches by multiplying by S. So 12 times 4.75 gives me 57 stitches. Sound okay? So each increase round is going to add 2 stitches to my overall stitch count. If I begin with 42 stitches, then I want to increase, I'm going to have to increase up to an even number of stitches to make those increase rounds work. So instead of 57, I'm going to go up to 58 stitches around my upper sleeve. That number is labeled 2 on your handout. Now subtract 1 from 2, and this will tell you the number of stitches that you have to increase over the sleeve. 58, which is my 2, minus 42, which was my 1, gives me 16 stitches. Now if we divide that number by 2, 16, that tells me the number of increase rounds I need. So I'm going to make 8 increase rounds over the course of my sweater. The next thing we're going to do is look at the length of our sleeve. This is shown by H on your schematic. In my case, I have really long arms, so H was 21. Yours is most likely going to be smaller than that, but it's okay. If I have 21 inches of length and I have 6.875 rows per inch, I'll multiply that number H by my number R, and I get about 144 rounds, which are needed to knit the entire sleeve. I'm rounding down to the nearest whole number, and this one can be even or odd, it doesn't matter.